Hi team. Hey, look, we just finished up our second session together talking about organizational character. And first session we talked about our own character, the character that we have as leaders, and how we mirror up to ourselves. This time we talked about our organizational character as opposed to culture, which tends to be a lot of other things like perks and things. We're talking about the character, the demonstrated values that your team, your organization has. And what's a leader's role? Well, a leader's role is to steer the ship. Remember, a ship left adrift rarely ends up in port. It almost always ends up on the reef. So when we talked about steering the ship, there are 5 things we said you should do. Number 1, first thing you got to do is define what good looks like. What are the values and how do you define them? Not necessarily a dictionary definition, but what does good look like? What do the behaviors around things like integrity and teamwork look like? The second thing we need to do as leaders is then communicate those values in everything that we do. Everything that we see, we relate back to the values. Maybe we use articles like blogs, maybe we use chapters in books, maybe you put the values on posters and things, which a lot of people already do. But if we don't communicate over and over and over again, those things won't sink in. Remember, if something's important, it's worth repeating. The third thing we want to make sure we do is hire for values. In other words, most people, most organizations, we spend a lot of time hiring people based on competencies, but we all know the failures occur around character issues. So we want to look at the values that are important to our company and make sure we're asking questions that relate to those values. Have these people ever demonstrated anything before that relates to the values that we claim to be important? Fourth thing we want to look at is reinforcing those values, making sure that we reward and we coach values-based behavior. We reward, remember the 4-step process, specific, timely, enthusiastic, and public recognition of the values and of the values-driven behaviors. And that's the best way we can reward people. It doesn't have to be with money, it doesn't have to be with gifts or anything, just recognizing the fact they are acting in line with our values. The other thing we need to do is coach. If somebody's not acting in alignment with our values, we need to make sure we coach them on the spot and point that out to them and help them get better. Now, the last thing that we need to do as far as establishing our culture, our character of our organization, and steering the ship is firing people for values. And if they have established a pattern of behavior, what are we talking about? A pattern behavior, well, the reason for a pattern behavior is one of 3 things. A, I've been a lousy coach. B, they're unable to change. And C, they're unwilling to change. And remember with C, if they're unwilling to change, what are they still doing with you? Why do you still keep paying them? Okay, so remember, it's defining the values, communicating the values, hiring for values, reinforcing the values, and firing for values. So my question to you is, what are you going to do? What have you started to do since our last session? Remember, we talked about a SMART goal. What's one thing that you're going to do? I'm going to ask you about it at our next session. If you got away with not talking about it at the earlier session, I'm going to ask you about it this next session. So be prepared to talk about what you've done. Until then, I can't wait to see you. Bye-bye.